Got Martin Shkreli back on the show.
He's been called the most hated man in America because he jacked up the cost of a life-saving drug.
Raised the price of a life-saving drug 5,000%.
So he could get filthy rich.
I invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination and respectfully decline to answer your question.
While you were in prison, contraband phones, trading on Uniswap from a toilet, allegedly.
See, there you can answer some questions.
I intend to follow the advice of my counsel, not yours.
He was trading ICOs from this phone.
Bro, what?
I couldn't believe it.
Do you think SBF is in there trading on Binance? Is he buying Solana? How's that going for SBF?
Well, I mean, guys in there want to make money by any means.
I think profits are a great thing to sustain your corporate existence.
This investigation, this deep dive you've been doing, definitely causing some controversy. Like, you've been doing this for 20 years, whether it's drugs, whether it's companies.
I don't know what it's supposed to be. It's a business. We're supposed to make as much money as possible now.
I started my career short selling. I joined Jim Cramer's firm.
I feel like you want to be famous, which is crazy because you're worth $45 million.
I'm more than that. But anyway, yeah. Okay.
You know, you make a lot of money if you discover something nobody else does.
They're keeping it secret. Something's going to come out later this year.
But I did say that I think Bitcoin will go to 1 million by the end of the year, which is kind of a crazy prediction. So you could say I'm bullish.
What the hell is that?
Well, it's an electrode array for brain communication, but it uses...
You put that on your head?
I put it on my face, actually.
How big of a potential alleged, I'm going to be careful with my words here, alleged scam is going on here?
I would argue some of it does border on fraud, or some of it, frankly, is fraud. But that's not the only problem.
What's up, dude? Looks like you got your Twitter account back. I was worried, you know, Twitter jail is harder to get out of than real jail. Elon made it happen?
7 years of begging. It was definitely, you know, thanks to Elon. If it wasn't Elon not there, I never would have happened. But it took longer than I would have liked, I have to admit. But, you know, it's good to be back regardless.
Did you have to slide him a payment, or like, did you pay off to that? How'd that work?
I was willing to. I think, you know, if you're just a nice person and you try to be helpful and useful, like I think my content can be useful. Some people like it. So I think eventually, you know, reason prevailed, but it did take some time.
We talked, late 2022. I think you were recently a free man. One of the most interesting parts about that was how in tune you were able to stay with crypto while you were in prison, right? You talked about people with contraband phones, keeping up with DeFi, trading on Uniswap from a toilet, allegedly. With SBF in jail, you're one of the few people that has kind of this inside scoop of how that could be playing out for him. Do you think SBF is in there trading on Binance? Is he buying Solana? How's that going for SBF, you think?
So it all depends on whether or not he has assets. Obviously, he's said many times that he does not. When I was in prison, I would often talk to my family through the contraband cell phones, and they would do things for me, like send an email or do the things that I couldn't do while I was in prison. So Sam has a brother named Gabe, who's, I think, a couple of years younger. And if I'm Sam and I have like some, I don't know, Tether or something stashed away, I would ask Gabe, say, hey, Gabe, go grab a shovel and go two doors down underneath the neighbor's oak tree, 6 feet and 2 inches, you'll find a gray tin box. And in the box are my private keys. And I need you to go to grab that. And I need to, you know, get that so I can trade. So, you know, who knows, right? But like, my general sense is, if you believe him, which is hard to do, that, you know, he doesn't have resources. And so using a phone to trade crypto is probably not, you know, useful for him. But he, you know, who knows? Maybe I bet you his parents are keeping him updated, sending him news articles and clippings. My dad, rest in peace, would send me while I was in prison, and everything from Decrypt to The Block, you know, and other kind of news resources that he could. And he would just copy and paste them. And we, you know, I appreciated that. And I got to sort of stay on top of things that way.
Yeah, I remember you were kind of doing like a play-by-play, almost how it could be going for him. Now, I'm just interested because I saw an article last week that Sam had another hearing. Like, what do you think it's like for someone like Sam? Like, he's now what, how long has he been there? 6 months? Like, how the hell is that going for SBF? I cannot picture this guy in a prison.
It sucks. I think they moved him from general population to, what do they call it? Protective custody.
Oh,
so,
okay.
so I think he's in, because one of the people that wrote a letter for him to the judge was a cop, a dirty cop. There's a lot of dirty cops in prison. It happens. And they don't put them with normal people. And so I connected that with another rumor I heard from a former inmate. And I add these up that I don't think he's with the average inmate right now. There's a room on the 8th floor of FDC where they kind of send people that just can't be put in general population. These are like the either child actors or just super famous people or rats, like mob rats, that couldn't survive because these guys will get targeted pretty quickly. So I think he's up there. It's a lot more accommodating up there. You can hang out there for 20 years, if you really wanted to. But I think that he has to get like a similar kind of situation going in his next spot. And I think he's going to probably play the medical card for that. So, he has ADHD. He's got severe issues like that. I think he can, look, it is what it is. You play every card you can.
Right.
And I think he plays that card and he gets sent to, I think they're called level 2 care facilities. Every prison is a level 1. So you can get your normal, medicines, antidepressant, your, Lipitor, stuff like that, hypertension drugs. But if you need extra, you go to level 2, where you can get a benzo, for anxiety. You can get an
Adderall?
Yep. Cause like there are a lot of older people in prison. I think people don't realize that the average population of prison is fairly old.
Yep.
So that means medical care. And, you can get sick in prison. I met a guy who got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma while he was in prison. A lot of prisoners with HIV, Hep C. So those level 2 care facilities are fairly substantial. So some people require round the clock care, some people no mobility. So all those things kind of like, there's a decent amount of the prison population that has to be cared for like that. My guess is if Sam gets that, he'll be in good shape.
I mean, I'm not worried about him. I was just curious.
If you toss him in with guys like me, he's got a problem.
Oh man, I just had to ask, dude. It's such a fascinating. I don't know why I'm so interested in prison life. I never want to go, but
the whole world is. If you look at this IONET situation, I think the whole world likes to look at like car crashes and stare at them. Look at the popularity of Jeffrey Epstein, some random rich guy, right? Who gives a fuck? There's millions of guys like this, but there's a special thing. Thankfully, there are not millions of guys like this. There are millions of rich guys. And then there's one guy who has this crazy mind, a psychopathic criminal mind, that's very depraved. And the whole world wants to hear more. Right. And what's the point, right? Like, why do we care so much? And the answer is like, these abnormal people, less abnormal psychology. It is fascinating to us. It's just a human condition, I think.
All right, enough of the prison talk. I just had to get that. The prison alpha, there's a few guests I can have on that I can ask you about that. But anyways, so you got out and you kind of timed it perfectly with the bull run. It's been fun to see you stay super active in crypto, and you've been doing a recent investigation into a potential $1 billion new fraud. We're going to talk about it. It's at the intersection of a lot of things I find interesting: crypto, AI, new coin launches. But first, just generally, like, what are you thinking about crypto right now? Are you holding Bitcoin? Are you excited about the bull market? Do you think it's over? What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say. I mean, I kind of like just try to be transparent. When I got out of prison, a few months later, or maybe even right away, I started a software company. As you can see, there's a bunch of guys floating around here. Company's doing great. We've raised a bunch of money from, quite frankly, I think about half of our investors are crypto native, which is interesting. And that's one of the things I want to talk about. And then the other half are like traditional software investors, some very famous investors. I'll be putting out a press release of something like that pretty soon. But they're household names. So I think that so my focus has been on software kind of generally. And software right now, probably the most exciting thing about software is generally, sort of speaking, AI. But it doesn't mean that just because something's exciting that you should do it. Right. Sometimes you should do the kind of thing people think is the least exciting. But we've dipped our toes in AI. It's pretty interesting. We also have we kind of do things a little differently from most startups. We don't do one thing, which is, I think, what a lot of people want us to do. But we've been able to find enough investors that support this business model, which is try a few different things. And I think that is more likely to lead to our survival, but it's less preferential for investors who kind of want to put you in a box and say, oh, this is the GameFi project that does this. And it's like, if they fail, it's like you wash your hands of them and you say, fuck it. And that's kind of not great if you're that entrepreneur, because you're like, well, if it's going to be hot or not. I mean, I'm betting my life and my business on whether or not, a bunch of people are going to get excited about it. It's hard to do. So for us, we have like a fintech app that's super exciting, that's doing well. We have 2 AI apps. One's just sort of this AI physician, and the other is this AI more infrastructure layer text-to-speech app. And then we do have something cooking in crypto. We hired I think fairly senior guy from Chainlink, which we're really excited about. We think he's great. And we're kicking around crypto stuff. We did have a crypto project we sunset. So we're just always looking around for interesting software, no matter what it is. And in our history, we've kind of been at between me and my co-founder, our CTO, been at the cutting edge of a lot of big trends in software at the very start. We adopted React almost immediately on Facebook's open source of it. We were some of the first adopters of Docker and Kubernetes. So we try to get as close to the bleeding edge as we can and try to convert that to useful product. Crypto's had a bit of a trouble converting into product, right? We get a lot of promise, a lot of financial stuff that happens that's really cool and great. You kind of have the opposite of traditional venture, where in traditional venture, you're scrounging around begging for money and you're trying to build the product as fast as you can and say, here's what I built, take a look, give me some money. And crypto, it's the reverse. You sort of get all the money up front, and then, you get this crazy valuation, and then you try to backfill and build the product as you go. And it's kind of giving you the bad incentive, because if you pump the token enough, you almost don't even have to build. And that is so backwards from the way software people think, where if you ignore crypto Twitter, you just go to software Twitter. The wisdom is ship, release, basically release as much product, write as much code as you can, and ship a new feature every week if you can. It's kind of the opposite of crypto, where it's like, don't even ship, just try to get the token going with airdrops and, other stuff like that. So I think that's kind of one of the issues with IONET. But getting back to like the state of affairs in crypto, I'm really bullish on crypto. You may have seen that I said that, and I'm not one to just do this hyperbolically for fun. I don't like the attention I get. I'd rather have less of it. But I did say that I think Bitcoin will go to 1 million by the end of the year, which is kind of a crazy prediction. So you could say I'm bullish.
You think so? What would you rate that percentage chance?
So I signed an ordinal with the Shah hash of why I think this is going to happen. And I said there was a 75% chance. I probably don't dial that back a tiny bit to 50.
Sure.
But I think that we have to be prepared for global adoption of Bitcoin. And, we'll see what happens is all I can say there. But I'm bullish. There's options listed on Bitcoin. The highest strike is 300,000. So you could actually go to ICE, get a futures account, and buy call options on the future. I bet Interactive Brokers will even let you do this. They kind of make this all pretty easy. They should be paying me right now. But I think maybe the call option for the 300,000 strike, which is obviously way out of the money, is like $3,000 or something. But you can buy the 100,000 strike if you want less upside, but more risk control. You can even buy the at the money. The at the money is super expensive. But that's my call. We'll see what happens. Other than that, I really have enjoyed Solana over the last few months. I got Bitcoin pilled when I actually used it for the first time.
Yeah.
We actually our fund tried to short Bitcoin in 2011. So we, I had a junior guy who said, Martin, I want to short this fake money. Don't you think I should do it? And I said, look, if you can do it, I'll throw $1 million on it. And it sounds, I'm not going to do the homework. You're going to do the homework, but it sounds like you've done your homework and you think this fake money is like monopoly money and it's going to go to zero. And I got you, man. I'll back you. And he never found a way to short it. Thank God. That was the first I ever heard of Bitcoin. And then 3 years later, I actually used it for the first time. And I realized what the magic was right then and there. And then for Solana, I had the same moment. A friend of mine from prison, who was actually pretty heavy into crypto in prison, he was trading ICOs from his phone. And I couldn't believe it. Bro,
what?
Well, guys in there want to make money by any means.
Sure.
If there's a way to do it, there's a way to do it. But he's one of the smartest guys I've met in prison. And
does he have a Twitter account? Can I follow him?
Yeah, Yeah, it's a crypto block. It's his sort of name is D Block, and he's rebranded. But D Block was, generally considered like the wise kind of runner, the wise guy who run the whole Prism. Like everyone kind of admired and respected him because he truly is a really brilliant guy. And he trades crypto. He helps projects out with, different connections to the hip hop world and other things. And he's generally just a bright guy. So he comes to me one day and he says, Martin, you got to get in on Solana. And I said, okay, I know Solana. I shorted some way back when. And, what's the big deal? He said, everyone's doing work on Solana. You got to try. And I said, as a favor to you, almost like to teach you about programming, I'm going to show you how to do it. And so I opened up the Solana command line tools and the Solana SDK and the SPL token command line tools. And I'm showing him, and I'm like, wow, this is actually really easy. I'm, creating the contract, boom, create a new key pair. I'm like, this is amazing. This is actually like the most amazing thing I've ever seen because I had a little bit of an experience with Ethereum, as you know, with an ERC20 token. And that was pulling teeth. It was a lot of time, a lot of money for gas fees, a lot of time for transactions in the firm. And this was just like a pleasure. So I said, you know what? There's another thing I'm doing with GPUs, and maybe I could connect these things together. So one thing led to another, and I'm working on a project on Solana. And again, it's been a lot of fun. I was able to talk to their senior management. Like, I think they're pretty sharp. So, they're also still very engaged in the project. It's 80 billion. They're still very engaged in all of it. And I think they're, pretty shrewd and they have a smart business mindset. And what I realized from that, I'm sorry to blabber on here, but what I realized from that is that you're separating the functionality of the blockchain from the actual like underlying like structure and principles. A lot of people don't give a crap what the underlying principles are. If they can send tokens that are valued immediately, they don't super care if it's centralized or it's anonymous or it's like, I just want to be able to send my buddy wherever, anytime, any amount of money. And those features are more important, arguably, than, okay, what's the soundness of this, centralization? What is the, all that stuff is kind of, do I really care? And so that's why I think a lot of people are thinking Bitcoin for like, the savings layer in essence, and maybe Solana, who knows, for the transaction layer. And, that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. I do think stable coins are awesome. I do think the government wants to ban crypto and shut it down. I think November will be really important. I encourage everyone in crypto to vote Trump, even if you don't like him. There's plenty to not like, but at the end of the day, Elizabeth Warren and Democrats want to put crypto people in prison. If you need more evidence, just go look at the docket, criminal filings. There's plenty of crypto people there. And they want to put more of them in there. And they want to drive all that investment to other countries. And, it's, and so I think that's one of the biggest things that's in crypto's way. But at the same time, there's a lot of crap out there too. And people talk about zombie chains like Cardano, and you see that there's, a transaction every 3 months on these things. And, it's, on Wall Street, they used to say trade by appointment. And you basically would be like, we make an appointment to conduct a trade. Like at 3:30, be there and we'll make a trade on this exchange. And then we had another tier on Wall Street. We had liquid, trades by appointment, and then trades by appointment, black tie dinner. That's like, trades like once a year. And you have stuff like Cardano that literally is, trade by appointment. And, we just don't need stuff like that. And why these zombie chains kind of stay up forever is beyond me. But I do think, if you exclude the zombie chains, there's some stuff out there that's neat. I certainly think like, as I said, when I got out of jail, the decentralized storage and decentralized compute is really solidly makes sense. I don't love DeFi in general, just because it's like 90% of it is trading useless stuff for more useless stuff, collateralizing useless stuff, borrowing. Like, you just don't need that. I think that it's nice to have those primitives, but if, it's just not necessary that we recreate what we created for fiat in the stock market and crypto. I really don't think that's that crucial. But, it's not like all DeFi is bad. It's just like, I don't sometimes get the point of it. We'll see. I do think solutions could be done there that are really good.
Yep.
I also like off-chain assets real world assets on chain, especially stocks, bonds, things like that. There should be a gold coin. I know there is one. But there should be a Tesla coin. There should be every stock in the world should be on chain.
To bring this full circle, Sam actually was trying to do that. There was even someone before FTX started tokenizing assets. One broker was back in 2017. You might have missed that one, but I think that they kind of I think they got so popular that the US government eventually came in. And I remember I logged into one broker one day and it was just that giant screen, FBI has seized this domain. But back in the day, you could put down Bitcoin. It was basically Bitcoin denominated stocks. And it was the only platform that was liquid enough. You could put, not serious size, but you could still, gamble 10, 20K and put some trades on Tesla, Facebook, whatever else, just with Bitcoin. And that was super cool.
Yeah, there are people doing this now with treasuries, like a treasury stable coin. And another entity, an ex-Goldman guy, that's trying to create it's called Ondo Finance, ONDO. They're trying to create this on chain, but literally the SEC's major, they were created for this exact purpose 100 years ago. 100 years ago, there were bucket shops here on Wall Street. I'm a couple miles from Wall Street, but where they would actually make counterfeit stocks. And there were also unregulated exchanges. So they were basically came to existence just to kind of stop this kind of thing from happening, that there would be one exchange, that there'd be one authorized exchange, one authorized, set of shares. And that was kind of the way they wanted it. And to do it on chains is hard because they can't inspect what we're doing it on. And if you want to go through the registration, because FTX decided they did want to do this, then you just end up having to do a broker-dealer license anyway. So you kind of back to square one.
Yeah, Gary Gensler is just, it's funny, even with some of the scams going on in crypto and some of the stuff that maybe he could look at, that's a gray area that he should look at, he still goes after stuff like Ethereum.
Well, it's not him. It's not him. Everyone talks about Gary. It's not him. He has nothing to do with it. It's all Elizabeth Warren. He works for her. There's no two ways about it. She's the head of the committee for economic activity. She is in charge of the SEC from the Senate perspective. She does the oversight. She's the chair of the committee. She gets to decide who else is on the committee, and she gets to decide who's the SEC chairperson. That's a backroom deal. And remember, this was a pro crypto guy, right?
Well, yeah, back in the day. Back in the day, yeah.
Why do you think he changed his mind? Because in DC, if you're up for a position, you say, "What do you want me to say, boss?
Yeah,
how high should I jump?" Because if he obeys his, controller now as puppet master, he might be in line for a treasury job someday. He might become a senator. Who knows? It's all this cesspool of garbage. And Elizabeth Warren, literally said she was creating a crypto army.
I remember.
An anti-crypto army. I think she might lose her seat this year. I hope so.
I hope so too. I do endorse it, but I don't want to get political. Anyways, one other thing I want to bring up with your market view about the Bitcoin to $1 million by the end of the year. I know we can't go into all of it why you think that might happen. You were talking about those Bitcoin call options. I wonder if you could get exposure buying MicroStrategy calls. They probably have those pretty steep.
Yeah, I haven't checked, but if you want to make a levered long bet on Bitcoin, it's obviously very risky, and I'd encourage you to be super careful and not lose more money than you can afford. But the other thing about the bet is, it could happen the year after. This isn't one of these things where it has to happen at the end of the year. It could be a 2025 event, but I do think part of it is political. I think part of it is, full Indy effect. Bitcoin has reached kind of this escape velocity that is important to acknowledge. And then if you really think about the future of money, it's kind of hard to avoid this eventual kind of collision. I had dinner with a founder building on Solana a month or so ago, and he said, something I never heard before. He said, "I advocate for the separation of money and state." I kind of took us that second when I heard that, and I said, kind of makes a lot of sense, right? Church and state separated
100%.
A couple hundred years ago. Why not separate money and state? Why my little country I'm from called Albania, we have this silly little currency. It's just a toy currency. It doesn't make any sense. It's smaller than most blockchain projects, but we have our sovereign currency, and it's kind of a facade. If anything, they're actually just tools to steal money with from kind of managerial class. And we've seen that with a lot of smaller countries where, people look, they have that derisive term, banana republic, and other stuff like that for those kinds of things. So I think, eventually we're going to start to see that happen. And yeah, the immutability of some of these things like Bitcoin, which has been stressed and challenged and taken to the mat, kind of gives you some flexibility and appreciation. Now, the problem is, let's say in wartime, our country never had taxes until wartime. And they basically said, oh, these taxes will be good for funding a standing army because we're going to need one. And then we never looked back. We just raised taxes over and over and over and over again since then. And again, I think that sometimes the flexibility of being able to change a rule is important. But you have that in Bitcoin. You actually do have the ability for node operators to get together and make a change. So I do think that there are some nice advantages here, and you're going to get that eventually. And when you do get that eventually, I think $1 million is actually could be a low price, as crazy as that sounds. And I'm not a hyperbolic guy. I just look at the numbers and say, global asset value is around 400, what is it? 400 quadrillion? Or am I crazy? Is that 400 trillion? I want to say it's 400 trillion. And then by the time you have enough inflation and economic growth, that could reach a quadrillion. And so if you look at Bitcoin, it certainly has a lot of upside to go, given where it's at. I mean, it could theoretically represent half of all financial assets, which is 200x upside. That could be hyperbolic. I don't know. But to me, if it's a superior form of money, why not? Superior technology usually takes over things very quickly. You don't have people, using rotary telephones or cordless, cell phones or car phones anymore. We use the current technology. It changes so fast. So I do think we're going to get that tipping point at some point. It's just a matter of what lights the tinderbox, I guess.
Those big numbers sound so funny, but when you compare it to like gold's total market cap, the 15 trillion, or even there's a better comparison that I've seen Chris Berniski make, where he talks about Bitcoin as a store of value asset, not just comparing it to gold. When you look at gold plus real estate as a store of value, not real estate as a home, but like how much money people pile into real estate that might live in a country where they aren't very secure about the future of whether or not they can invest. They buy real estate elsewhere. You have art, you have all these other assets that people kind of treat as a store of value. And it's interesting, like when you add all those up, it's not looking at 15 trillion as like, that's how big Bitcoin could get because gold's at 15 trillion. It's like, no, it's might be closer to 30 trillion, 40 trillion if you start to count things like real estate. So it's interesting, man.
Yeah, I think you get that alpha by itself over time, right? I mean, so the number sounds crazy, but what crazier is how far we've got. Because I say $1 million, it sounds like super provocative. That's 15x from here. That's not much. 15x is not, some crazy number. Tesla stock went up 15x, Nvidia stock went up 15x. It's really not like some crazy thing. And if you let that happen over a decade, it really becomes a lot less crazy. So a lot of people say, well, Martin, you must be assuming the world's going to end. I have a friend, very famous guy, Tucker Carlson. He's very interested in gold right now because he probably does think the world is going to end more than I do. I don't think the world is going to end. I don't think the U.S. Treasuries will implode. I don't think the U.S. stock market will implode. I think you can see $1 million Bitcoin while you see U.S. all-time highs for stocks and bonds, which is, I think, again, hopefully I'll be able to reveal the bet, in a year or two, regardless of whether I was right or not. But I think that, or maybe half right. But I think that a lot of people assume, Martin, you must think World War III is coming. That's the thesis. And I'm like, no, I want to avoid World War III. I want us to be the leader in Bitcoin globally and, do it before Russia does it or China does it. And obviously, those guys are going kind of in the other direction.
Yo, quick break in the action to give a shout out to the show sponsor, Mantle Network, which has quickly become one of the most popular Ethereum L2 solutions because it offers such nice reward opportunities for users. If you're in crypto, you want a couple things. You want low transaction fees, you want to invest in the top projects, and you want rewards, whether it's airdrops or yield opportunities. The reason I was excited to partner with Mantle is you don't have to be an influencer. You don't have to have connections to top projects. You don't have to farm an airdrop for months at a time. You can start earning rewards today to top projects in the Mantle ecosystem. Hit the link down below. It's the Mantle Reward Station and check it out. All right, let's get back to the show with Martin. Did you see that tweet from Snowden? He said he kind of left the details a little bit secret too. I think it's one of those things that he's going to reveal later, but he said, my prediction is there's already another large nation state that's been acquiring Bitcoin this year. It'll be announced at some point. They're keeping it secret. They've been accumulating. that's happening. And he kind of leaked that. He kind of hinted that he might know something's going to come out later this year. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's Norway. There's not too many countries that have surplus. Norway, Switzerland, and a handful of others don't have any sovereign debt. They have tons of surplus. Every other country's drowning in debt. And it pains me to see the US being one of those countries, right? So sovereign wealth funds, Singapore with Temasek, obviously the Arab countries, Middle Eastern countries are all kind of in that boat. So they certainly could be stockpiling Bitcoin. I think that, that doesn't necessarily mean Bitcoin will go up. Norway is a very rich country. They actually represent about 4% of the U.S. stock market. I don't know if you knew that. They if you look at the 13F filings and stuff like that, they're one of the largest shareholders, top 10 shareholder of Apple.
Norway.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have guessed.
Apple, Facebook, all these like big American companies, they own 3 to 4% of every single one of them.
Why is that?
I'm not enough of a historian to know. It has something to do with oil. I think they're an oil-rich country, but I also think they've just managed their budget effectively. And, look, I mean, if you can earn 7% on stocks and bonds over the long run, and nations have a long run, right? They have to exist for hundreds of years, not like you and me, right? If you do that for 100 years, 200 years, and you're borrowing at, basically effectively at interest rates, you should be able to create wealth. And I think, certain countries have had that structural advantage of having, being erected on oil sands or whatever it is, that they have such a surplus. Our country has been addicted to debt, and spending, and it can't, get itself out of that hole. But who knows? Maybe one day we can have a surplus again. But I feel like, this like borrow money to grow GDP faster than others has a limit where like eventually like you go through austerity. And when you go through austerity, for example, like we've increased our money supply by a huge amount, right, in the last few years. And our GDP has been like very like modest growth. So imagine if we didn't increase our money supply or even contracted it. Would our GDP be like -5? Would it be a massive recession, depression? Probably.
Yeah, we'll never know. We can't stop.
Exactly.
I mean, we're hooked. We're in the system. I was talking to Kevin Kelly at Delphi. These GigaBrains, really good research firm, crypto shop. But they all came from the traditional world. And it's funny. He was kind of walking through the theory that some people have had about how this could be a shorter Bitcoin cycle. It's a 2-year cycle, and the Bitcoin's already topped. We brought forward too much demand, and he was kind of saying, he's like, look, like I could be wrong on this, but he's like, we've ran all the numbers. He's like, there's not really a way. This isn't a Bitcoin story. It's more of like, there's not a way out of this for the U.S. We have to keep stimulating. We have to kind of spend our way out of this fiscally. And he's like, it's hard to picture a world where that's bad for Bitcoin. So it's interesting. I don't think we can stop. Like that's just the world, the system we've created here in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a chance that using AI or something like that, we could get economic growth that's substantial.
If the Federal Reserve was run by AI instead of 12 old guys in suits, I would be less bearish on the U.S. dollar versus Bitcoin. But for in the current system, it's tough to. It's tough to just not stay long Bitcoin versus the dollar. I don't.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think we'll get it right in the U.S. one way or another. But look at other countries. Say the UK, it basically was sitting on top of the world. This tiny country with all its global kind of empire. I think first used the word empire like for the UK, and it was it's sort of dwindled away. Year after year, century after century, into its present state where it's like barely a top 10 economy. So, we could have that slow burn over the next 100 years and it doesn't affect you or me personally. We'll be dead by the time it really matters. So it's kind of going to be a really interesting experiment. I'd love to be alive for the next 500 years so I can see how it plays out, but unfortunately it's unlikely to be in the cards.
Well, we can stay long until then. I don't know. Maybe Elon and AI and Altman, maybe they do figure it out, dude. Maybe we will be alive in 500 years. Who knows?
Maybe our kids. Our kids.
We'll be a hologram. We'll be in some wearable VR. I mean, we'll still be trading Bitcoin. If we're alive in the future, then there's going to be some new crypto Ponzi we're all trading.
I had a reason to read about Hal Finney again. And, a lot of people forget that Hal Finney and his wife are both Hal is frozen right now.
Cryogenically.
And cryogenically frozen. And then his wife also is scheduled to be. So she even refers to him in present tense sometimes for that reason.
Wow.
She said, Hal's just, on a break. I don't know that you can unfreeze somebody cryogenically, even with the most advanced technology. Never say never. But, maybe, I was reading about how for other sort of cryptographic, sort of real cryptography reasons, crypto and cryptography have been divorced. It's hilarious. But, I actually do a little bit of research and work on cryptography, and it's a fascinating field. And I was reading about this old guy, Jerry Salinas, who was a NIST NSA guy, and he actually wrote some of the first elliptic curves. And he used a seed phrase. This is why he was in the news recently. Jerry passed away last year. But in 1998, he wrote a paper that basically, I think most people in Bitcoin know this, I think, but in 98, he wrote a paper that basically predicted Bitcoin. So he's not he's not a horrible Satoshi kind of dark horse candidate. I'll send you the link if you're interested. And then the weird thing about that paper is there's like 20 references in it that are also like an idea for electronic cash, the possibility of, permissionless electronic cash. Like, this wasn't a new idea at all. Like, people had the Bitcoin idea. Nobody put it together and actually delivered it. And I think a lot of people were sitting on the idea, and the 2008 crisis kind of pushed Satoshi into action where Salinas was already thinking it 10 years before. So I think there are a lot of people like him out there in that crypto cypherpunk community that were like, yeah, man, decentralized cash, let's do it. And then once the great financial crisis came around, he said, all right, fuck it, let's actually do it. And but Salinas, the story about Salinas that's really interesting is somebody said that the first hash seed phrase that he used to sort of secure elliptic curves was Jerry needs a raise. And that's so that all of our, technology is secured by this like one root phrase. But it's, I think, apocryphal, but they say that he tried over and over again to get that root phrase. There's even an award out for somebody that can get it. He moved on to other elliptic curves, but the original elliptic curve, he kept trying. He said, hey, I don't know if it's Jerry really needs a raise or with a period or with the, this capitalized or that. And everyone's got up into a kerfuffle about this. It's fairly funny. But Salinas kept doing real work in cryptography, especially around this area, well into his retirement. And, I was kind of looking around him and Hal and seeing if there was a connection between them, if they ever crossed paths and so forth. But Salinas, seems like, he kept a pretty clean profile, but that's what you would want to think, right?
Exactly.
We'll see.
Yeah. Who knows what's going to happen with the cryogenic? That's fascinating with how Elon's already put in, we have one person now, I think, on planet Earth that's alive with a Neuralink. How long is it until you can just plug a Neuralink into someone who's frozen? Maybe they can't move anymore, but they can, you can get their brain firing again.
That would actually that's actually really interesting. I've never thought of that. And now I can think of some experiments I could do. Look, I'm a biotech guy. I started all my professional career in biopharma. Have worked with a lot of dead animals, living and then soon dead. This is how we mimic human biology and physiology. So I immediately, once you said that, I'm thinking a bunch of experiments you could actually do with animals to see if you reperfuse their brains, basically with blood. Would you get those signals firing again? Right. You don't need movement. You don't need any of that. It's just like, can I get any of those signals? It's really interesting. I have this little thing here I'm working with. It's this.
What the hell is that?
Well, it's an electrode array for brain nerve communication, but it uses.
You put that on your head?
I put it on my face actually, and it can tell. Basically, you can think of words and the subtle thoughts. The thoughts you have lead to subtle muscle movements, and it's been proven and shown actually that. And there's a company doing this. We thought about maybe rivaling them. We'll see. I'm not 100% sure we're going to end up even going through with it. But basically, the electrode array, which is what Neuralink uses too, by the way, can pick up subtle movements. Even when you think of a word, all of your muscles will actually start to have very small vibrations.
That's crazy.
You can pick it up. So
Damn.
You can silently be thinking, man, I really hate this podcast. And you can have it actually like, be voiced. So it's kind of neat. It's a new area that Facebook and a bunch of companies, the big company doing it is called Whisper. It's a startup. They have a prototype where basically you just think and, all these things happen. And Control Labs, this company, Facebook bought its bracelet, and you can basically like control a UI with your fingers as long as the bracelet's around. And it's gotten almost to the point where you don't even have to make much movement. It's like pretty subtle, and you could type maybe without a keyboard. So I think those things are coming in terms of the future of how we interact with computers. I don't think it's going to be through implanting things in our brain. But I think it's going to be maybe the rest of our body that can be used to like guide UIs and things like that. There's no reason we need a mouse. You should just be able to do this.
Or just think, you just look.
Yeah. Ideally.
If you do figure out a way to, I don't want to go too off the rails, but if you do figure out a way to strap that device to a dead animal and the brain starts to turn on, send me a message. We don't have to talk about the Bitcoin bet. You can keep that secret, but I want to invest or maybe just see the animal. I just want to see what's going on there.
So for what it's worth, I'm a bear on all this stuff. I think that I'm a bear on, not a bear on Neuralink, because I think if you frame that as a medical device company, and there's 50,000 people, by the way, that have tracheotomies and they cannot speak. They have that, like, it's called an electrolarynx. So it's a laryngectomy, by the way, not a tracheotomy. And they have an electrolarynx, and you know what it sounds like. It sounds terrible. It scares kids.
It scares me.
So could you give them this kind of device and you have AI make the sound, and it's kind of a nice medical device. And so the same thing applies for Elon's product. It's a terrible idea for the average person, but if you're paralyzed, it's a lifesaver. And I can tell you from the medtech pharma experience, a device like that, Medicare, Medicaid, commercial payers, foreign payers, they'd probably pay $1 million, for that surgery, because it's such a life changer. I mean, like you said, you saw the guy. He could basically work again. He could certainly be a crypto pump and dumper. Now that he's got the mouse, I mean, he's ready.
Give him a couple months. Give him a couple months. I mean, he's on Twitter. It's fascinating. Like, you do have someone, especially because Elon also runs Twitter, so it just adds to how insane this whole thing is. But you have the first human being who's kind of paralyzed, I think, from the neck down. Now he can type, he can tweet on Elon's company, he can interact with the world. I mean, it's really, really cool to see. Hell, I would put that thing in my brain. I know some people say, I don't want the chip. I don't want to eat the bugs. I don't want to eat the bugs either, but I would put the chip in my brain. Like, I'm okay being the guinea pig.
No, totally. But if the surgery was easier, sawing this bad boy open is not easy. It's the hardest bone in the body. It's, I actually don't care about the brain tissue. It's pretty safe. It's the craniotomy, man. It's like getting this thing, kind of like getting a nice hole into the brain it's gnarly, and I think that to the extent they can find a way to do it some other way, someday, great. But like, man, it ain't easy drilling a hole in the skull.
Yeah.
that's what really holds it back. And, if we can get some of that without it, that'd be great. But, maybe there's another way through the nose or something. I mean, who knows, right? But like, we'll eventually get there perhaps. But right now, like, it's a tricky operation.
If it had some way of just telling me, Luke, you're about to make a really fucking stupid trade, like, that's all I really need. I'm down to pay whatever that is, my yearly cost. I'll run the numbers, how much I lost this year on just impulse trades. That's really all I need. I'll suck it up. I'll get the brain, the skull, whatever. I had open heart surgery, so I've had some bones broken for, they've opened me up.
That's the second hardest bone, is the sternum.
The sternum. And then all your ribs, actually, when they did my, I was a baby at the time, but yeah, I still to this day have a big line down my chest of like, they opened me up like I was. Yeah,
I think that Elon's doing amazing things. The one thing I'd say as well is that in 1998, there's a cypherpunk mailing list, and there's no Bitcoin, and Elon's on that list too. So he shows up. He shows up in the craziest places.
Because of PayPal, he was the PayPal mafia, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. But Adam, this is Adam Back's on the list. All the kind of Bitcoin players are on this list, and he's talking about, mostly Elon is talking about government surveillance and why he doesn't like the NSA or IRS or NASA or some stuff like that. And it's more political than it is anything else. But it's a very weird kind of group. that almost certainly Satoshi was in that group too.
It's interesting. I didn't know Elon was on that list. It's funny that Elon was on the original digital cash list in 1998, and now present day 2024, when Bitcoin's at 67K, we have almost global adoption. Elon is actually all in on the Dogecoin trade, not really interested in Bitcoin. It's funny how that played out.
I think he was given the Dogecoin, so he kind of has this like $6 billion asset. That
you think he owns $6 billion in Doge?
Yeah, like half of it or a quarter or a third of it.
He owns half? What makes you think that?
I don't know for sure, but I think that he owns a lot of it. And when it's like Shiba for Vitalik. If you're given a bunch of it and it's like becomes a thing and you can kind of by self-fulfilling prophecy, make it a thing.
Yeah.
Then it's like, okay, here's a real asset that's worth real money. And so he has a vested interest to promote it. But again, these are all secrets that, will, remain secret. And we'll learn one day who Satoshi was, I bet. And, it's fascinating stuff, but, the world keeps spinning. So we'll see if there'll be new blockchains created that surpass Bitcoin or whatever. And I actually do think the third generation blockchains, like potentially Monad and others could actually do quite well. So we'll see where it goes. But we wanted to talk about something else, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let's get into it. I know you're going to have to run to a meeting after this, so we got to dive in. So you have been, you're no stranger to really controversy in the crypto world. And your latest expose, this investigation, this deep dive you've been doing, definitely causing some controversy, potentially uncovering $1 billion scam. And it's kind of like it's really at the intersection of a lot of things that I think are interesting right now, which is crypto AI, right? Which is a sector which, meme coins are really the only thing that's done very well this bull market. And you have crypto AI, which is less than the entire market cap of Doge. So if AI is going to be a bigger thing in the future, crypto AI could play a role there. And at the same time, it's really hard for the average person to figure out, like, is this crypto AI project real or is it all smoke and mirrors? And you started doing this deep dive into one called IONet. Before we talk about what you found there, because it is interesting, it's a little bit scary. I just want to say, like, some people started calling you out when you've been publishing this research. They said, why should we trust Martin Shkreli? He's the Pharma Bro guy. He's the most hated man in America. What the hell does he know about this? This is kind of your bread and butter. Like, you've been doing this for 20 years, investigating whether it's drugs, whether it's companies. You ran 2 hedge funds. This actually is what you've been doing for 20 years. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. So, I started my career short selling. I joined Jim Cramer's firm in March of 2000, which happened to be the exact top of the NASDAQ that took many, many, many years for it to recover. There was a dot-com bubble, in case you weren't around then. And I learned to short internet stocks, but then I learned to short biotech stocks, and I made a little niche for it. Now, my trading history is not that great. I'm not a good trader.
Join the club.
It's, as we were saying before we went live, it's a really hard racket. And anybody telling you that it's easy and you just paint a couple lines together and you're going to make a fortune, you're lying to you.
When crypto is going up like 200% a month, I am one of the best traders on earth. Seriously, like during alt season, I'm really fucking good.
Super easy, right? And then it's everyone wants to be a good trader, and it's really tricky. And you need a lot of patience, a lot of wisdom, and you need to work really hard. And the people that are good at it, I was talking to a friend the other day. I forgot who this was. I tried to remember who it was, but it's somebody super prominent. And I was like, so what do you think, is trading something you learn or something you're born with? And we both agreed. We were like, let's flip over our result at the same time. And I said it was 80-20, something you're born with. He said it was 70-30. So we both agreed after like decades of trying to be a good investor that people that we know that are really good traders, a lot of them are kind of like savantish. They're kind of like a good example is Steve Cohen, who's widely considered the best trader possibly even ever. And if you actually listen to Steve talk, no offense to Steve, I love you. But he doesn't sound like a college professor. He actually sounds more like your Long Island plumber or a guy you'll meet at a Long Island bowling alley. And again, he's a super smart guy. He went to Wharton. He's, very, very credentialed. He also happens to own the Mets and he's a super zillionaire. But like, he just has a sixth sense about it. It's the most bizarre thing. The 2 guys I know personally, were some of them I've worked with, were the best traders I've ever met. I don't know that they can always explain, why they make trades.
It's how they're wired. It's certain trades. Yeah.
Yeah. I think all of the guys I've met that are like 150 IQ gigabrain guys, they're terrible traders. They're awful. You give them a NASDAQ screen and $1 million, it'll be $500,000 before you know it. So it's like it's certainly not intellect. It's some other form of pattern recognition / patience / emotional sanity. I think super important, stuff like that. So
or insanity. I think it's a perfect blend of both.
But one of the things I was really good at is digging really deep and finding these red flags or whatever. And of course I would end up having some red flags of my own, which, I acknowledge. Again, I maintain my innocence, but I also know, some things speak for themselves. So, but well before I got into any trouble, I was a dogged kind of pursuer of some of these companies because I like to buy put options. I like to short, and
right.
You make a lot of money if you discover something nobody else does. And I have this 20-year career of outing and exposing biotech scams. But the one thing I tell you, Luke, is that not every short is necessarily a scam. Sometimes the market cap just doesn't add up.
Yep.
Every single entity, project, whatever, has its good parts and its bad parts. And IONET is no different. There's a lot of bad parts, but it's always has to be relative to the valuation, right? I mean, if you're talking about, take Solana, it's got its challenges, right? It's got parts, it's got bad parts.
It's got some downtime.
It's got some downtime. It's got some other issues, network congestion. But at the end of the day, if you were given an investment opportunity in Solana at a 1 billion valuation, it'd be pretty exciting. If somebody wanted to sell you Solana at a 1 trillion valuation, less exciting. So it's all relative to the price. And IONET is trying to have a price that's very, very, very high. And it's a very immature, problematic project. I would argue some of it does border on fraud, or some of it, quite frankly, is fraud. But that's not the only problem.
So okay, I don't want to cut you off, but I just want to kind of set the stage, because I know there's probably some people listening that are like, what is this IONET? So you start doing this deep dive. The coin is called IONET, by the way. And as I said, it's at the intersection of crypto, AI, decentralized compute, and it's a new token that's set to launch, right? Some people are listening, they're probably familiar with that, but for the people that aren't terminally online and autistic like us, they're focused on real life things, like what's happening, NBA playoffs, right? So for the people that are out of touch, IONET is this new coin launching. How the hell do you stumble across this? Then we'll get into what you find, because I've been going down the rabbit hole of your tweets. Some of it is so absurd, it's like hard to even track, but like, what are they trying to do? What's going on? How'd you find this? So
the company's called IONET. The token is going to be called, if they ever release it, IO. It's a Solana token, I think. So it turns out 6 months ago or so, these guys called me up and they said, hey, we rent GPUs. I get a call like this every week, roughly, because we happen to spend $1 million a year on GPUs. So we have relationships with, all the GPU providers. And we have one that we really like called Lambda. They're the cheapest. Part of the big reason we really like them. And price matters a lot. They're also very reliable. So we're a Lambda. We like to say we're a Lambda shop. And we tell the guy, Shadid is his name. We said, look, we're a Lambda place. Unless you can beat their prices, we're not interested. He said, I can beat their prices. And that's when I said, what? Nobody can beat Lambda's prices. Like they're loco. Like they're willing to price at a level that's like shockingly low, like half price of Amazon, for example, or sometimes even more. So we get on a call and we say, if you really have a price at that level, we'll take it. He offered us a price like 20% below Lambda's price on on an NVIDIA chip called an A100, which is the old class. The H100 is the new class. And so we know chips. Like this is the one thing we know. I can't tell you anything about GameFi or DeFi or, NFTs or anything like that. You want to talk AI? Yeah. AI and GPUs, I've got that covered. And I've spent the last 2 years studying that, building a nice company full of experts. My CTO is an expert in distributed systems. So this is like perfect fit. It's AI and distributed systems. So we read the box and we don't ever talk to them again, basically. And then we see they're coming out with a token. And I recently had this sort of fight or spat with a sort of a former friend over some tokens. And he, and that's its own long story.
Bull market things.
Yeah. And so turns out that he's promoting IONET, and he got a tattoo of IONET, which is kind of pretty extreme.
That's John McAfee level. That's like this. You remember that? He got a giant Skynet tattoo. I think that was actually decentralized compute. We're going. Crypto is a flat circle. Time is a flat circle.
Yeah, for what it's worth. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not here to talk about him. So I look into this thing and I said, okay, well, I'm mad at the guy for something else. So I started looking at IONET. I said, okay, what? I know these guys. I was an early customer. It turns out that they said, without our permission, they said that we're a customer of IONET, which isn't false, but they didn't ask me first to promote that. And then they also said we were a Y Combinator company. I like Y Combinator a lot. Gary, consider him a friend, the head of Y Combinator, but we are not a Y Combinator company. They've never invested with us. I've never said that we are. But they just kind of made that up in their like promotion about us. They're like, YC company DL software uses IONET. It's like, well, we don't really use IONET, one. And then two, we're not a YC company. So I was really off-put by that because it was like desperate. Like, don't you have some other clients other than my crappy little AI startup that you can point to? So I was a little ticked off at that. And then as I dug into IONET, I wanted to know, like, what's it all about? And someone told me that the token was supposed to be worth billions of dollars. And that's when I said, hold the phone. If there's an AI token worth billions of dollars, I want to check it out. And I checked it out, and I think that they've misrepresented virtually everything about them, which is really kind of nuts. And I think it sort of all starts with the CEO, but it kind of extends into the business and all of the other things. But, you know, when I saw that they said, you know, this is going to be a multi-billion-dollar token, potentially even 5 billion or 10 billion. And I even heard a rumor today that they were trying to OTC tokens at 2 billion. This is a product that doesn't work. And it's a product with a lot of other issues around it. And it's certainly not worth 2 billion.
I have an article right here. It says Solana-based DePIN IONET hits $1 billion token valuation in the latest funding round batch. So the token isn't out yet, but they're raising at $1 billion valuation or more. Is the product working? Like when you rented these GPUs, is it all a scam? Because I know that you've published some tweets lately kind of saying like, hey guys, do you have all the GPUs? And now we're getting numbers that say they have 500,000 GPUs. There's numbers that say they have 10,000 GPUs. Like how big of a potential alleged, I'm going to be careful about words here, alleged scam is going on here?
Well, it's like all things like this. And I actually did this once and I learned this the hard way. The devil's in the details and the wording. If you're really cute with your wording, you can kind of like tell a half truth. And I kind of used to do this and I was like too smart for my own good. Where like, for example, the definition of assets under management, there are a bunch of technical definitions. And if you scour for the best one, you can kind of be cute and say, well, I meant this. And that's kind of what IONET's doing. They're saying they have 500,000 GPUs, but you can only rent, according to their network, 10,000. What's the difference? Where's the 490,000, right? If you can't rent them, how do you have them? Or how do you count those in your network? Well, he's saying they had 500,000 GPUs that have connected to their network. They're not rentable, but they're connected. And it's like, well, that's a big difference. You know, it's almost not, it's like saying, look, I have $1 billion. It's just that I have $2 million in my bank account. I just have 998 million that's unavailable at the moment. It's kind of like, well, what does that mean? You know, it's kind of a ridiculous thing to quote. So that's just one example of kind of like, is it true? Is it false? It doesn't matter because it's misleading. When you say you have 500,000 GPUs and your GPU vendor, your GPU renter, you're leading me to believe you have 500,000 GPUs you can rent. And of course, when you ask somebody, they say, oh, no, that's not what I meant. And it's like, well, it certainly made it seem like the effect you had on me was that I felt that you had 500,000 GPUs you could rent out. And the honest truth is we don't know how many GPUs they have to rent out. Because the last 3 days, the network has been down twice, which if you know anything about cloud computing, which again, you may not, most of your viewers may not care, but we use GPU cloud vendors every day. We would never use a GPU cloud that was down once in a year, just once. It was down the whole day on Friday, and it was down a good part of the day today. And Friday into Saturday, actually. Because if you're an enterprise, let's say you're running YouTube on a cloud, and it goes down for 2 days. Your whole website's down, your product's down for 2 days, it's over. You know, it would be a disaster. So cloud is all about continuity, no downtime, availability. Those things are crucial. These guys just don't seem like they're building a serious cloud product. They're more concerned about tokens and airdrops than they are about their clients, their uptime, how many GPUs they have, their pricing. Like those are the things that are going to make a cloud company successful or not. This to me looks like a token pump and dump, not a serious attempt to build a serious company. Maybe they need a new management team. Maybe they need something else, but it doesn't feel like they're actually trying to build a successful cloud.
They're getting this $1 billion valuation. I imagine the way that that's working is the way that a lot of crypto works, which is just comparative valuations. You have the render network on Ethereum that's at like $3 billion valuation. So people are thinking, hey, if this is a decentralized compute, it's on Solana, it should be worth a couple billion. But in actuality, it's like, if they don't really have the compute power, what the hell are we doing here? What else did you find with the CEO, the founder? I saw some people uncovering that he'd ran previous like trading group scams, or, I'm using that word loosely, by the way. If their lawyers are watching this, allegedly, I have no idea. He could be an innocent man, but what else have you found about the team? Because I think they were supposed to launch a token. Now even that's delayed. Like, what the hell is, I'm just trying to figure out how big of a smoke and mirrors is going on here.
Yeah, it's very, very shady. So I'm just going to try to rent some GPUs from them right now and see if it works. But the reason it's really shady isn't that, the guys had some failures before. We've all had failures as entrepreneurs. I've started companies that went nowhere. I've started projects that went nowhere. It happens, man. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. Is it a good sign? No. But is it a horrible thing that's the end of the world? No, it's not. You can come back from it. Lots of companies and entrepreneurs have had second acts, third acts, fourth acts. But what you can't come back from is what I found, which is that many people in the Middle East consider him to be a scammer. And this isn't one person. This isn't two people. This is multiple podcasts and websites and Telegram messages and WhatsApp messages that I've had translated from Arabic. And that's, again, a lot of people tend to blame the investors or something like that at this point, or blame the idiots that are piling into the token. The token's not even out yet. I don't blame those people because in this case, it's in a foreign language. It's hard to read, hard to translate. And it's in corners of the internet that are not easy to find. And you have to have this like dogged, like, okay, there's 800 links here. I'm going to read every single one. Most people give up by link 3 and they're, going to do something else. I sat there and read a lot of Arabic, and it was translated a lot. We paid a lot of money to translate it. And, there are people in the Middle East that consider him a scammer that's taken all their money. And I spoke with one VC. Who invested, and they said they were aware of the controversy and that they didn't regard it to be his fault. So that's fine. But I think that if most investors knew what I had posted, including some accusations that he uses drugs or that he dealt with drug dealers or like, things like that, like fairly bizarre stuff.
Oh, God.
And again, I don't take all of it, by the way, as fact. I think it's a grain of salt. And he's even come out and denied it, which I think is fine. That I think there are substantial issues here with honesty and other parts of kind of like his demeanor. So for example, if you look at some of the stuff he has done, and he does stand by, it's kind of this like very vague, you used the word a second ago, I would just call it promotional, kind of like, here's some technical analysis.
Sure.
This is how you make money. He had a t-shirt on. The company name is Millions. He's counting bands of money. Like, this isn't what serious entrepreneurs do. He even had this like trading boot camp where like he would teach you how to trade and become rich. And it was very much like this Andrew Tate wannabe kind of alpha male wannabe thing. And it was just very cringy. And again, not typically how sophisticated investors do things. And he even said that he had a quant fund, which sort of predated IONET. It was called AntNet or something like that. And it sort of became IONET. So this was originally a high frequency trading thing or quant thing. And according to one of my sources, one of the biggest VCs in the world, it was supposed to be some kind of quant fund that had better numbers than even Renaissance. And he left and he passed on the round. And he said that, well, if they were so good at trading, they should, why pivot to GPUs? And, the obvious reason is, they weren't so good at trading. And if you looked at any of these Telegram bots, the guy explaining why and how liquidity works and why, if you look at this support level and there's resistance level, you can make a bunch of money. And the guy's like 25, it really doesn't make any sense. And so it's sort of like, fairly obvious that the guy is not, he seems like a very skilled salesperson, but he doesn't seem like a very skilled technical person or kind of like somebody that, I would certainly, not somebody I would trust, especially when there are people out there claiming all the money is gone. All the money was spent on luxury, which is one of his old, his good brother, named Adele, his Arab brother. These guys are pretty serious about their religion. And, in these interviews, they're often referring to the Quran and the religious law, and, that it's wrong to, scam people. And I think that, this guy, Adele, was actually fairly trustworthy. And I don't think, he said over and over again, I have nothing to gain from this. I don't want to, besmirch anybody's reputation. This is a bit of a different world from America, where we play a little faster and looser here. Out there, I mean, you're really not supposed to do stuff like this. And Adele said, look, I hate being here right now, but he took the money and he ran and he spent it on all kinds of nonsense. And this is only available in Arabic. So, it's not easy to sit there and translate. And I have 3 different sources about this that on the record, and then several sources off the record who are prominent Middle Eastern people in the venture community, who won't go on the record, but will say, because I'm from this community, I know his reputation, and it's not a good one. So again, some people are still willing to make the bet on him. And again, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I just think that if he wanted to come clean and make a new name for himself, that he had to approach IONET with a very sort of strict kind of like, let's make sure I get this right. And instead, he's sort of seems to be trying really hard to get the token to work, not the company.
As is the case during the crypto bull market, people just want to launch tokens, get the success. It's an interesting case. I encourage anyone who's interested in following along. You've been live tweeting it, so I encourage anyone to check it out. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to make any accusations. I don't want their lawyers coming after, but definitely an interesting case when $1 billion crypto AI project is launching. A lot of big names in the crypto world have invested, and something like this could be going on. My takeaway from this is, and I'm curious to get your take, because I think that crypto AI is super interesting. Maybe this project's a bad example of that, and how some projects are going to try to take advantage of the hype. Do you think, though, that decentralized compute as a sector is interesting in crypto AI? And what other potential areas of crypto AI, some crossovers, do you actually think are promising, that are worth investing in? You don't have to name projects. You can name projects if you find them interesting, but I kind of want to wrap on that. I know you only have about 10 minutes left, so I'm curious what you are bullish on. I know we have one bad example now that people might want to investigate before they invest in, but what is exciting in the crypto AI world? You kind of come from this world, the software, you understand the GPU world. What are you looking at crypto AI wise?
Yeah, so we're working on something. And again, there's some people saying that, because you're working on something, you hate them. And that's just not true. We like, for example, Akash. And Akash is Akash is like the IONET that actually works. And it's like, and that's the part that's weird, right? Is because Akash is like a fraction of the market cap that IONET wants to be, right? So it's like, why would I trade the token that doesn't work at a valuation several fold the one that does? So the other thing about Akash, is the CEO, Greg. He's a legendary programmer. He's a famous programmer that's made a lot of huge contributions. So he's like a whiz. Now, I'm not saying Akash is perfect, by the way, and I hope to announce maybe a partnership with them or something. Akash is not perfect. It's still not that user-friendly. There's a big trade-off you make when you decentralize to get the benefits of decentralization. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. And it's going to be a while before Akash has tons of GPUs and a huge footprint, but he's in it for the long run. He's been doing Akash for a while. He's going to continue to do it for a while. That's the right way to do it. I don't think Ahmed has really got his head screwed on right regarding that. So I don't dislike IONET because it's competitive, possibly. I dislike it because of all the stuff I mentioned. Again, Akash has upsides and downsides. The upside is they're run in a legit, honest way. The guy is a very talented manager and a very talented programmer. The downside is, it's just not that user-friendly for the average enterprise. And maybe we can change that. So I'm working on something that is a lot. It is very, very user-friendly, but it's not meant to replace anyone. I think that the tough thing with AI is about 80% of AI is training. Training is very hard to do distributed. And I would argue it's almost impossible to do decentralized. So BitTensor sort of, I think, wants to do it a little bit, but I basically think you got to take training and just throw it away for now. Maybe revisit it in a couple of years. but 80% of AI compute, GPU compute is training. Just kind of throw it in the dust pit, in my opinion. And it's not that big of a deal because the other 20% inference is still a lot. I mean, NVIDIA is worth $2 trillion. 20% of that's still plenty. So there's nothing wrong with inference. So inference is your model is already set. It's already been trained by a bunch of computers, and you just need to query the models, pass it inputs and get outputs. So I think you can do that in a decentralized way. There's still more carves we have to make of this because that big AI pie, like I said, 80% is out. So now you're doing it with the 20%. Well, a chunk of that 20% is going to need privacy. You can't really do something decentralized by sending models out and then also have it encrypted. That's sort of the idea of a ZK proof, and which hasn't been sort of, really been useful yet. So for now, I have to send you my whole model. I'm sort of like taking my clothes off.
Fully open source.
Showing you the model, right? Which if you're OpenAI, I'm not doing that. I spend millions making this model. I'm not, maybe billions. I'm not going to just send you my model. I want that run on my servers behind closed doors. But for the, say, 50% of these inferences or 30% that are like, I don't mind you seeing the model. I don't mind you seeing what I'm asking you to make of it. And I don't mind you doing it on your computer. That is a place which, again, it's about 5% of AI after we do all our salami slices. 5% of AI could probably be moved to crypto in the cloud. You still have another problem, which is verifiable. Paradigm has researched this, many others. How do you verify that when I send you, Luke, a job to run on your GPU, that what you send back to me is actually what I asked you for? What if you just send me random ones and zeros? How do I know that you ran the compute? Well, I could look at it and say, this is supposed to be a picture of a dog and it's white noise. I'm not going to pay your note. Well, hold on. I have to verify that. That's going to cost me more money. I don't want to spend the time verifying it. I want it super fast. So you have this double compute spend that I actually teased the CEO of BitTensor about this. I said, oh, you guys have solved the double compute problem, double spend problem. And he goes, no, we haven't solved it. We found a way to make that double spend, the verification check, much cheaper. And I looked into it, and I think that's all hogwash. Because to check that somebody ran a computation right now really requires you to run the computation again. And there's no way to really say, I know you ran this computation without seeing the intermediate outputs of the computation. Now, ZK, by the MIT folks, Macaulay and Goldwasser and so forth, it's a revolutionary thing. It just hasn't been made practical yet. It takes hours to run a ZK circuit that actually, once you build the circuit, to run it and prove that you ran it without disclosing what you ran and how you ran it. So that technology just isn't there yet. I know there's companies like Jensen and others trying to make that work. And the first company that makes it work could be a multi-billion-dollar company. But it'll be a while, I think. So without zero knowledge, this is the only place where it can really make sense. And I haven't found that in virtually anything. I haven't found it in IONET, certainly. I haven't found it in BitTensor, which has a big valuation and mostly bootstraps their efforts through what I would call Ponzi-nomics. And we could have a whole other sort of talk on that. I think Akash is the most honest player in the space. But again, it's very hard to use. It's better than the other two, that's for sure. But and there's one thing I would have to buy. If you forced me to buy something, I would buy Akash. But, we need to make big strides in making these computers easy to put on the network and easy to rent. Crypto is the biggest obstacle, interestingly. The average shop like ours, where you had a bunch of guys just sitting around kind of like doing a bunch of work, hacking away on computers. I'd show you our whole office, but I have to move our laptop. We got 10 guys here sitting away programming. These guys don't know anything about crypto. They don't want to know anything about crypto. Our CFO, if we asked him, hey, can we pay for our compute cluster with Solana? He'd look at me like I was Martian. Like, what? You want me to trade our cash for this thing so that we can pay some other thing? I can't do that, dude. Just pay AWS like everybody else. Why do we have to do this? Even if I told him there's a 50% discount, he'd be like, I don't know, man. AWS is the trusted party. It's US dollars. What if something goes wrong with this crypto? What if we get hacked? What if this? What if that? Let's just use USD. And I think that's something that's, a really big barrier. These are new companies. People want reliable compute. So I think it's going to be slow going. And that's why anything I think we do and anything that anybody else does, you have to see the attitude of a 10-year, 20-year horizon. If you look and talk like to the Solana guys, they really do seem to have that kind of horizon. Look at like IONET,
it seems like they have a horizon of literally like the next 3 weeks to get this token out there. And again, to give BitTensor some credit, it does seem like they have the long run in mind. And I've often challenged them by saying, what can I do with BitTensor right now that works and is impressive? And the answer is nothing. There is nothing. But eventually there might be something. They seem to be smart people, and they seem to eventually want to get there, and they seem long-term, which, again, paying $3 billion for that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But blockchains are like any other asset. They discount the future value. So even if it takes BitTensor 5 years to get there, it's okay, because they have the patience, they have the funds, they have the energy to do that. I'm not sure that's the case with a lot of other projects. And all you have to do is look at how the founders speak and how they act. If you're doing random airdrops to get people excited and retweet it for tokens on social media, like that's not a good sign. You know, if you're serious and you want to make huge strides in a tough field that's very competitive, that a lot of scientists are looking to make their name on, you know, that's another matter completely. And that's why I'd rather trust almost like the losing horse that's less promotional than a lot of people who are like trying to bet on the scammer because they're so promotional. They think like this is going to pump, you know, because this guy's a scammer. It sounds great. And it's like,
scams do pump the hardest.
Yeah. We'll
in
see.
crypto, I'm not encouraging it. I'm just saying historically it happens. It happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think the problem with musical chairs is that somebody has to be left without a chair. And it happens before you know it. You know, you think you're slick and you can get out at the top, but more oftentimes than not, you don't.
I'm glad we do have people like you. I'm glad there's gigabrains out there that are making the initial bet and kicking off momentum for some of these things. As a dumb trader like myself, who's just a monkey clicking buttons, I just see, okay, AI has some momentum. Crypto AI is a theme. I'm going to buy some of the best performers. And if you catch the bullish trend, you'll do all right. But I know you have to run in 5 minutes. Martin, always a pleasure to catch up, dude. I wish we could talk about either your Bitcoin bet or the project you're building. But when both of those are public, I'd love for you to come back on. We'll talk about them. Look forward to hearing about them. Martin, appreciate you coming on, man.
Sure. Thanks. Let's talk that.